Okay, next question from the Honourable Member for Kensington Malpeque.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question to the Environment Minister. What is your policy on large-scale irrigation ponds?
The Honourable Minister of Communities, Land and Environment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And over the last number of years, farmers in the agriculture sector have made use of the practice of irrigation holding ponds. Mr. Speaker, they're usually located in the field for collection of natural runoff and snow melt. In some cases, they top them up from some water supply, but over the last number of months, members of my staff and members of the staff of the Department of Agriculture have worked with farmers with recommendations on how these ponds can be constructed and built for and maintain things that aren't a problem, such as leaking and evaporation. And I think there are various ponds that are located all across the province.
Thank you, Minister. The Honourable Member for Kensington Malpeque.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been getting a lot of calls from residents concerned about a series of large-scale irrigation ponds being built in my area. Question to the Environment Minister. Are you familiar with this development?
The Honourable Minister of Communities, Land and Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I said, yes, we are aware that holding ponds, irrigation ponds, are being all across Prince Edward Island. As I said, we work along with those farmers to help them come up with ways that they can construct them to the most efficient manners. Those are recommendations. They're not regulations, Mr. Speaker, and we work with farmers every day to come up with best practices they can use.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Member, Kensington Malpeque.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the last 2 years, there have been a series of developments of these irrigation ponds, each one bigger than the last. Question to the Environment Minister. What licenses, permits, or approvals were required from you as Minister before these large-scale irrigation ponds were built?
Yes. The Honourable Minister of Communities, Land and Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And currently there are no licensing methods that are needed for a holding pond. There are no permitting for drilling of low-capacity wells, but I would like to mention that when the new Water Act comes in force, there will indeed be a need for permitting for wells that may be used to feed these holding ponds or any other agriculture purpose. It is important that islanders know where water withdrawals are occurring, and things of these natures and of others will be a very important part of the Water Act moving forward, so that we can identify and publicly and transparently show islanders where water is being withdrawn and used all across the province.
Thank you, Minister. The Honourable Member for Kensington Malpeque.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a lot of confusion about this in the community from residents who feel they're in the dark about what's going on. Question to the Environment Minister. Was there any requirement to hold a public information meeting for the community before these ponds were built?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of Communities, Land and Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I said, there is no licensing, there is no regulations, there are no permit that are needed for the holding ponds. There are other practices that farmers use on their own farms, and they do not hold public meetings on those as well, Mr. Speaker. So as we move forward, the Water Act will certainly highlight that permitting is needed. If there is a pond that is going to be fed from a water supply, those levels will be online so that all islanders can see, and every pond will be noted where they are across the province.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Member, Kensington Malpeque.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question to the Environment Minister. Do you think there should have been a public meeting held to put your cards on the table before these irrigation ponds were built?
The Honourable Minister of Communities, Land and Environment.
As I said, Mr. Speaker, there are all kinds of practices that go on farms every day, whether it could be clearing land, whether it could be growing of crops. They don't hold public meetings on things of that nature. There is no a mechanism for a public meeting regarding a holding pond, but as I said, as we move forward with the Water Act, there will be permitting requirements involved, and farmers will be working with them to support them when they need to drill a well of any nature, so that those what they're going to use for withdrawal levels are recorded, and it will become part of the big parcel of how the Water Act will move forward in PEI.
Minister. The Honourable Member, Kensington Malpeque.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So no approvals were needed and no public information session was held. Now people are seeing industrial irrigation ponds built that are basically man-made lakes powered by dozens of well pumps. Question to the Environment Minister. Is there anything in your much-delayed Water Act that would deal with this type of situation?
Honourable Minister, Communities, Land and Environment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I will be very pleased when we are able to get the Water Act completed and brought to the floor of the legislature. This indeed, the purpose of the Water Act is to protect the quality and quantity of our water. As we move forward with this new Water Act, the first time for Prince Edward Island where the policies in place to protect our water, its extraction levels and where it's being used on PEI. Water supplies that are now being used to feed irrigation ponds or holding ponds will all need to be permitted. And that's for the ones moving forward and the ones that are in existence today. So we will have a really good control and handle on where water withdrawals are happening across the province.
Honourable Member for Kensington Malpeque.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To a lot of people in my district, it looks like a loophole has been exploited. Question to the Environment Minister. Do you think that projects like this are skirting the spirit of what's trying to be accomplished with the Water Act?
Honourable Minister, Communities, Land and Environment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as I said earlier, any wells that are being drilled in the future will need a permit, but those that are in existence will also need a permit. So as far as skirting any of the laws or policies that will be coming forward, that would not be possible, Mr. Speaker. All of those wells will be permitted. We will know where they are. They will be documented. They will be put online for all islanders to see.
Right. The Honourable Member for Kensington Malpeque.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Some of the calls I've been getting on this are saying that these irrigation ponds are being powered by as many as 30 wells that are basically going at all time. Question, Environment Minister. Can you confirm how many wells were drilled to power these irrigation ponds in Spring Valley? Is it more or less than 30?
The Honourable Minister of Communities, Land and Environment.
Mr. Speaker, unlike the member from across the floor, I do not think members of our farming industry are trying to find loopholes and ways of skirting what's going on in Prince Edward Island. They are very good stewards of the land. They are trying to grow crops. They are trying to run businesses, and they want to be part of how water is protected and how we're watching it in the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. The Honourable Member for Kensington Malpeque, final question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Folks in my area are calling these ponds man-made lakes because they're so big. All the secrecy around this development has some people asking me if this is why the government keeps delaying the Water Act. Question to the Environment Minister. Is part of the reason for all the delays in the Water Act to give a chance for some of these farms to get these irrigation ponds before the Act comes in?
The Honourable Minister of Communities, Land and Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and certainly I don't buy into this sinister plan that the Honourable Member brings from across the floor. The Water Act is a significant piece of legislation in Prince Edward Island.
How many wells per pond?
It's a piece of legislation